My wife hates slugs. If she sees a slug, she will stamp on it. Like
There's no
there's no karma.
there's no empathy towards
There's
slugs.
no empathy. It is just pure hatred. And I or I'm learning to get a similar hatred for aphids because they're bloody everywhere. And because her responsibility in the garden is she births she births all the seedlings into the little
Mm.
pots. And my responsibility is once it goes in the ground, I got to keep it alive until it gets fruit or bears. That's kind of, I mean, it's in the my responsibility zone now, and it's kind of been a bit of a disaster. Our cucumbers I don't know what's going on with the cucumbers, but I've lost a lot of them. But our beans are struggling, and I was really hopeful. She doesn't want us to do beans anymore, but I think we can do beans again.
Yeah.
We've got massive aphid infestations all over them. So I've tried lots of different things. Tried spraying them with water. Tried doing all this other stuff just to get rid of the aphids. And I've reached a point of either genius or cruelty where I realize what I'm doing now is I'm just stroking the plant, and if I see aphids, I crush them
Mm.
in so that there's a field of death and destruction of aphid guts all over this plant. So when the new aphid comes along, it might go, do you know what? I'll give this one a miss. I'll give this one a miss. That's my psychology.
I don't like the
Because
vibe
I'm
of this
trying.
restaurant.
This is. I'm like, I think it's working. I'll be honest. I think it's working for two reasons. A, I think the beans are detecting kind of like my loving attention that I'm giving to like each and every
Mm.
leaf, like underneath. And it's the aphids are like, do you know what? I'll give this one a miss. And I was thinking about from a suffering perspective.
Yeah.
Like I am creating some pretty damn awful conditions for aphids. It's pretty awful what I'm doing, really. Like if I came back as an aphid, I'd be like, that bastard. I hate him so much. And I'd be like, yeah, but I'm trying to save like the bean. Like I've decided the bean is in my tribe or the bean is
Mm.
part of
Yeah.
my thing and I'm gonna save the bean and screw the rest of you. But that's like the suffering, I that suffering, it's not my suffering, it's like I'm creating suffering in an aphid community. And it's worth it. But it's also not really worth it from like a cosmological balance perspective. It's just worth it to me for
Mm.
my situation and
Yeah.
my
The
being. I mean,
greater world
I'm
isn't really better off because of it, but your
yeah,
life is.
my life is, and in my life in partnership with the beans. I don't care if aphids are on a plant in the garden. But I've just decided I want this bean to live and I'm going to kill all the aphids. So there's like, so I've been refining that thought. It really has. Every time I kill an aphid, I'm not joking, Tom. the suffering, the suffering thing that the veganism thing. But I was toying around with different ways of phrasing it because I don't think it is like minimize suffering. Because if it was, I wouldn't kill an aphid. I'm
Yeah.
supposed to minimize suffering. Um, It was, and I've evolved it into a sentence. I'm fairly comfortable with the moment, but I'm also willing to adjust. But I'm fairly comfortable with the moment, which is, um, the suffering has got to be worth it. That's like a pretty simple way of expressing it. Like if you're creating suffering, it's just got to be worth it. Now, worth it can mean different things. It's not. I'm not saying we have to. I don't think we ever have to sit down and describe kind of the amount of suffering which will make it worth X or Y or Z. I'm just saying, like, just accepting the fact that you're creating suffering and just thinking, is it worth it? Yeah, I think killing some aphids is worth it. I don't think, I don't think like one of the things I could do is go out and get chemical mon. Oh no, let's not name a company. Chemical pesticides or something like that. I could go do that.
Yeah.
I could go do that. But I know the impact that that will have on quite a vibrant microbiome which I've created in the garden. I don't know if the okay suffering for me because I think the plant will be not as healthy for me. So I
It
don't
could,
think that
yeah.
suffering is going to be worth it. It'll make my life easier, but it's not going to be worth it. So I don't know. So it's just got to be worth it. The suffering's got to be
Yeah.
worth it.
I think that's
Yeah.
the challenge with so many things. and where there's an ethical dilemma, and I do think that sustainability, to a large extent, I mean, it's talked about often as like a technical challenge, but I do
Mm,
think that at a deeper level, it is more of a moral challenge. Um, and and I think once you flip into the moral contemplation as opposed to the technical contemplation, everything becomes much more nuanced because there are no like black and white answers. Everything is a bit murky. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and the avian example is yeah is a perfect one of those because we just don't know like what is the greater good. Like if you don't do that, then
Mm.
ultimately the bean plant won't survive. You won't get the beans, and
Mm.
then
The aphids will thrive.
the aphids will thrive. They'll have a great time. They'll be very
The
happy.
ants, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And everything. So there'll be lots of good that comes of it, but then equally, and you could say, well, you'll be no worse off because you can just go to the shop and buy something. But then you going to the shop and buying something is going to have a much probably bigger negative impact on the environment and other things
Well,
than you eating your own beans, right?
the stuff I buy from the shops is almost certainly has done more aphid massacring than
Significantly more,
significantly
as well
more than
as
mine.
like
So
probably the
yeah,
toxic pesticides and
yeah,
fertilizers and the trucking and
yeah,
the
yeah,
plastic packaging and everything that goes with
yeah.
it.
So like, but I also don't think that's also I think one of the things that I don't think it's a problem that it's nuanced.
Mm.
I think it's the what are you even debating?
Yeah,
It's the reductionist of the argument to figure out what it is even the thing that you're having a conversation about. I don't know if we're gonna. I don't think I'm going off topic here, but because it's very top of mind is a lot of stuff happening in Israel and Gaza,
yeah,
and that I posted something on Friday. I'm trying to post like every Friday just as a habit, just to make people know it's okay, just to say, I think this is bad.
yeah,
Just to practice, I think this is bad. What is your decision matrix? If you're willing to kind of like sit there and call out company after company after company, oftentimes companies that are trying to do some good but maybe haven't met a bar,
yeah,
right? That's all they're doing. And you're quite comfortable, like rationally saying, right, that's the right thing I'm doing, but you're completely unwilling to say, do you know what? I think maybe burying babies under tons of rubble and so they die by being buried alive. That I don't even think I can comment on that. I'm not even gonna comment on that. Do you as a human being not feel that this suffering is worthwhile you talking about? Whereas that suffering you're gonna talk about till the cows come home. If you're somebody who doesn't think that saying, listen, we probably shouldn't bury children alive, I don't think you're a sustainability person. Full stop. I really
mm.
don't. I don't think I don't. I think you're somebody who believes you are. I think you're somebody who feels tribal allegiance to this identity.
Yeah,
But if you don't have if you're not driven by this kind of like raw fundamental principle, and if that's not driving your decision making as to what you will willing to believe in or not believe, then I don't know, you're just following along. You're just parroting what other people are doing and thinking that makes you, yeah, you're just parroting. I
yeah.
can go more deeper into that, but I'll just, yeah.
No,
There's another
no,
thing we need to dive into that stuff. Yeah.
no. I do think it's really important though, and I saw one of the comments on. I think it was this is probably the same post
Yeah.
you wrote on Friday, which was
Mm.
which was sort of saying, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Asim, but there are certain things that in a corporate context we
Mm.
just can't talk about because it might be bad for the company's reputation or it's too political or whatever.
Mm.
And and to me, it's like that highlights a really weird like quirk in our society because I think that's probably
Yeah.
not an unusual perspective, and
Yeah.
that there are just some like, oh no, it's like it's taboo, we can't talk about that. But then
Mm.
that's a very unhealthy place to be when you're on the one hand saying that you're like passionate about making the world a better place and passionate to the point that you will, as you say, go online and share your perspectives and sometimes call out people who you think are not doing the right thing. But then the
Mm.
things that are actually much worse and much more significant, it's like, no, we can't talk about that because
Yeah.
somehow our culture or some invisible force has decided that this is
Yeah.
off the table. This is off the table for discussion, and
Mm.
and it's like, well, if we're only discussing things that we're given permission to discuss, we're not
Yeah.
really having like an open and honest discussion. And you said in one of our earlier episodes this thing about this book you were reading, about, written by some
Yeah.
samurai in China hundreds of years ago,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and the line that made you stop in your tracks, which has been on my mind a lot since you shared it with me,
Mm.
was something along the lines of um, allow them their useless moves and block their useful moves.
Yeah.
So they feel
Yeah.
like they're making progress, but actually you're just
Mm.
allowing them to dissipate, like waste their energy on their useless
Yes.
moves, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and I feel
Yep.
like this is an example of that, where it's like you shout as much as you want about this company over here is greenwashing,
Yeah.
but when it comes to something where it's like something terrible is happening, like, children are being killed, you're not allowed to even talk about it.
Yeah.
It's not about who's right or wrong, whether you fully understood the
Yeah.
nuance of the political situation and so on. It's just you're not even
Yeah.
allowed to talk about it, which is crazy. So they blocked useful
Yeah.
discussion on like one of the most important topics of our time, which I find
Yeah.
fascinating. When I say they've blocked it, I don't know who they are. Like it just is like in society,
I
it
do believe
seems
there's a
blocked.
concerted effort. No, I
Yeah,
do believe there's a concerted because there's you don't have to dive in too deep. There's actually I've gone up. Okay, anyway. So yeah, there is it's very well documented the efforts that that goes into to, especially from kind of Israel regarding some of this stuff. But just I want to talk. I think most of the issues is it's self. When you say they, I actually think it's self censorship
yeah,
that's going on. It's
mm.
very self censorship. Like one of the things I want to try and just do is just help people realize that it's okay. Nothing bad is actually going to happen with you just saying, "Hey, I think this is bad."
Yeah,
And I think what that guy was expecting, they didn't even like the post because even liking a post like that is damaging. It's very interesting when I post anything about Palestine, I know exactly who's going to respond to it. I just
yeah,
know it. It's the community that is. And the sustainability community, there's a very few. On one hand, I can count the number of people from the sustainability community who will like one of these posts,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
again just like a really. And I just want people who are listening into this to know, like, that is something I think about a lot, like a truly a lot. Like, I don't think the sustainability community is my community. I want to be very. I don't think it is. I think it's a. I'm hunting for the. Do you know what? This is the moment we should do the thing that I said we always forget to do. But I want to actually do it right now. I think it's a good moment to do it. It's like you and me, Tom, right? It's like you and me. You're one of the ones that kind of talk about some of this stuff.
yeah,
I mean, just like when we've known each other for, I don't know, 7 years, like like
yeah,
acquaintances
something like
ish
that.
from like
Yeah,
something like before COVID. We're all in the same circles. And then it was just, I think it was like 2 years ago or something. I wrote my first article on not the Guardian of the Educators, but the first article on ayahuasca, and I shared it. And you reached out and you said, "Hey, that's the really
yeah,
interesting article. We should chat." Um, and we chatted, and then and I think for me, it's been really fascinating that I truly thought that there wasn't really anybody who was thinking kind of the way I was thinking about the world. Like I
mm.
truly cared about what's going on with our planet and on this planet, and yet I was like really out of sync and felt completely out of sync with what is going on and said in the sustainability community itself.
Mm.
And so what's been so fascinating with me, I just want people don't who are listeners don't realize this, that me and Tom, I think we were chatting over Christmas, and you mentioned you'd writing a book, and I shared you an early draft of the Guardian's Educators, and you were like, "Whoa, we should talk more." And then we talked more, and just on that first like conversation we had, I was like, "Listen, let's just do a podcast."
Yeah.
And then so for people understanding kind of my and Tom's and my journey, it's not like we started this podcast because we knew we were so aligned on a lot of different points. I don't think we did. I think we had
No.
a good idea that we were somewhat in some areas aligned. I don't know how you feel about it, Tom, but for me, the thing that's blown my mind more than anything is just how aligned we've been. And there's been topics that I've kind of raised with you. I'm like, shit, he's going to think I'm nuts. Then I'm like,
Yeah.
then you start talking. I'm like, Tom, hold your horses. You sound crazy. Because I'm like, holy shit. Wow, we're way more aligned. I don't know how do you feel about it? We're way more aligned than I thought we would be.
Yeah, well, it's interesting
Yeah.
because exactly as you say, when we had that first conversation, whenever it was, sort of around Christmas time, um, I think we both realized that we were both exploring similar things, similar sort of tensions
Mm.
within ourselves, within the sustainability community, but we didn't really know what each other's perspective was. We just knew that we were on a similar kind of path of exploration. And I think what's been fascinating through this is, I guess, not just finding that we're way more aligned on some things that we probably hadn't expected, but also finding that there are things that we don't necessarily fully align on, but then those are like some of the most interesting areas to explore because underneath it, we are aligned. It's just that there's all this weird nuance that we're like trying to get our heads around. Um, and I think like for me, what's been coming up is this sense that like values are
Mm.
basically underrated. That
Yeah.
like even if we don't know what they like, even if we can't fully put them into words, like underlying values basically are like the foundation upon which everything else is built. And I think what our conversations have revealed to me is at heart, our values are basically the same, but the way that we
Yeah.
might have interpreted some of that or actioned some of that might sometimes not be exactly the same. But that's fine because that's interesting to discuss and see new perspectives and new ways of framing the same values,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then the other side of that I've really come to notice through these conversations is then going back out and looking at society more broadly as well as what's like the sustainability community is this feeling that like we don't know what our values are in a broader sense. Like you and I might on as individuals and other people might as individuals, but as a society and as a sustainability community, like we don't really know what it is we're talking about because or what we're trying to achieve because we don't even know what our values are. So everything else is kind of just like shooting in the dark because it's not rooted in anything.
Yeah. I want to dive into that because I've got a theory as to what really I don't know what I've just got a theory about that which I'd love to
Yeah.
dive into you dive into with you. um but like just to wrap up kind of so yes, so I would think that's a really good point. Like we share values, but I'm surprised. I was surprised to find another person who shares similar values at me in this space. And I suppose what I wanted to bring it down is to call out to whoever's listening
Yeah.
right now. Like if you've made it this far into this podcast episode or other ones, and you're like, you're feeling uh, like us, like okay, this is really interesting. I do share these values. I am uncomfortable. I couldn't share it with other people. I didn't really know I could talk about these topics. I didn't really, if this is just resonating with you, what we're doing, understand that this isn't engineered with me and Tom. We've kind of discovered this during the same journey that you've been on as you've been listening to these
Yeah.
podcast episodes with us. And all that we're really trying to do, all I'm really trying to do is find more people like us or more willing people who are willing to explore this space like us. So
Yeah.
if you've made it this far into this podcast episode, if you're interested in what we're doing, understand we're not trying to build like an empire here. We're just trying to find, the 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 people who want to think like us. So just share it. Just share it just with the purpose and intention of actually, listen, this is resonating with you. I'm sharing it with you just so that it might resonate with you also. We're just trying to find our tribe, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there are lots of people out there who are probably quietly,
Mm.
silently on their own, thinking in a similar way, on a similar journey of exploration, um, but also feeling like there's nobody else out there, or they're kind of nervous to kind of
Yeah.
stick their hand up and say, "Yeah, yeah, me too."
Yeah. And that was kind of like I keep on meaning to say that at some point
Yeah,
in one of our podcast episodes, but I
yeah,
just thought I'd say it
yeah.
right now.
So if you are one of
But
them, stick your hand up.
yeah, stick your hand
Yeah,
up, and we should have a think about kind of how do we actually create like a literal like space for people. And if you've got ideas, if you're listening, you've got ideas for how we actually join. Is it like a signal group? I don't know. Like, how do we have this conversation? I suspect people may want to have these conversations, Tom, in a private domain
yeah.
and not like publicly on like a Substack thing. So that's one of the things I'm thinking.
I think that's true.
Um,
Yeah, and
yeah.
and I do know a small number of other people um who I've become friends with, or people who I was friends with already who have started to have some of these conversations with me in private, and that's been fascinating and amazing. But it is a thing where it's like it's in private because
Yeah.
there is this tension of what is acceptable in society right now versus what people are really feeling and thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is kind of very, I mean, if we're talking, yeah, that is very, that, and I think you're right. It's about the discovering the values that you have. There's a fascinating episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I mentioned before. Like,
Yeah,
I love this show. It is brilliant. It is one of them. It is the most underrated show on TV. Full stop, I would say. It has been going up a long time. One of their early episodes, I forgot the name of it. It's Mac, one of the protagonists, believes in God
okay.
quite seriously, and is trying to convince the rest of the crew that God exists, and does like a whole. They do like a whole like judge and someone's from the prosecution, someone from the defense. He does like a real defensive argument, and it's done in a very comedic way. Yeah, it was like, do you believe that the God created an Earth in 6 days? And he goes, why not? Well, scientists, scientists say so. He goes, which scientists? Oh, all the scientists say that, it got created over a million years. How do you know? Well, it's written it's written in scientific papers. Well, what papers? What papers? Have you read those papers? No. He goes, oh, so you're taking it on faith. You're taking it on faith that it's true. And it's like so interesting. It's kind of like I had that thought very early days in my sustainability journey, like the days when I was like still quite insufferable and speaking on stage, and I was the hero, I was playing the hero, and all this other stuff. And I would, the times when I'd call people climate deniers. I don't call people
Yeah.
climate deniers anymore, but I'd call them climate deniers. Um, and I realized I was like, oh, you're all these climate, they're denying the climate. Oh my God, they're not following the science. And I was like, one day I just hit me. I was like, wait an effing second. I haven't followed the science. I'm just like accepting. I'm just playing this story where I have not followed the science and I'm
Yeah.
saying it's real. And these other people have not followed the science and they're saying it's not real. Um, and how can I possibly, like, what is my right to say that I'm correct? What, there's more scientists on my side? I don't know if that's, these days I don't put much weight in that at all. So that's when I went away and actually did follow the science,
Yeah.
which was incredibly useful and also, interestingly, tempered down a lot of my fear
Mm.
with what was going on because it was suddenly bedded in kind of actual science and what really is going to happen. And it's not like the world will not end in 2030. It will be very, very far from not ending in 2030. So so that's from my perspective as a sustainability, that was me in that tribal ecosystem of not really being driven even by science, but what values. I wasn't really even being driven by. Was I being driven by values? I don't think I was. I think I was just in the ecosystem. And I want to finally with one thing. So the thing I want to dive into, and I'm talking for ages. The thing I want to dive into, but I read a book called The Myth of the Left and the Right. This is all going to get tied together.
Yeah,
The
I remember
Myth
you
of the Left
mentioning
and
this.
Right.
Yeah.
Telling you about that, yeah. And it was such a fascinating book, and I really highly recommend people read it because about half of it is references. It's really hard to, every sentence is punctuated with little numbers. Even a sentence, mid-sentence, everything is referenced. Every single point is referenced. And the basic thing that it talks about is that when it comes to politics, we think there is this essentialist theory of politics. It's called the essentialist theory of politics, which is why that there is some essential nature of a human where that nature is manifested as, well, you align to the left and you align to the right. And that's kind of, there's this great, I'm reading Harry Potter to my kids right now. We just did the sorting hat scene. So, Slytherin. And so you put the hat on and it analyzes who you are and your essence. And it goes left, right, you're left, you're right. So there's this essence. There's this kind of this essentialist theory of politics. There's this essence to you, but they've never actually been able to actually just define what that
Yeah.
essence
Yeah.
is. It's just there's this essence, and that's what explains what's going on. Whereas a socialist theory of politics just throws that on the end, and it just says, "Listen, that's the reason why you can't find this essentialist truth, what makes you left and right, is because it's BS. It's not true at
Yeah.
all. You basically decide that you're left and you're right, and then you adopt the ideologies of left and right. So you just decide, and it can be many different reasons you can decide to be left. You could decide to be left because you believe in one issue, which happens to be in the bucket of issues that the left tribe believe in.
Mm.
So you get sucked into the left tribe on that one issue, and then you go, oh, I must be left. And then you adopt all of the other beliefs of the left tribe. And then you get into really complicated spaces because you're like, well, actually, you believe, I can't believe in that because my original belief was this. Oh, I must
Yeah.
be this. So the same thing goes to the right. You have some belief when you go to the right and you're like, oh, shit. I didn't really have opinions on immigrants before, but yeah, I suppose I really hate immigrants now. Yeah, that's a really good point. I hate immigrants. Yeah, I didn't really have an opinion on it before, but yeah, it makes sense. I hate immigrants, and I do really love paying taxes. Um, and that because it all broke down once you look at, like, there's also this thing called a sticky ideologue. So I'm a sticky ideologue, which is that when I was absorbed into the left cult when I was younger, the left believed in anti-war,
Yeah.
right? So I was anti-war. Being anti-war meant being left. I got absorbed into the left ideology, but the left ideology changes over time.
Yeah.
The left party's ideology changes over time. So the left party has now changed to pro-war. And then you're left with this cognitive dissonance because you're like, wait a effing second, we're anti-war. And then the
Yeah.
new left ones coming in are like, no, no, we're pro-war. And so with the right in the US, it's kind of very interesting because the right in the US used to be small government, like libertarian,
Yeah.
right? And then it changed to big government. The right used to be pro-abortion. No, yeah, the right used to be pro-abortion. But then when they wanted to get the Christian vote on their side in like the 70s, they had to get They had to become anti-abortion.
Mm.
So you're not you're it's a unbelievable, and I cannot recommend to people enough to read it because it just blows out of the water this whole idea that left and right even exists. And so the same thing goes for if you're in sustainability. It really frustrates me because sustainability, and by the way, sustainability used to be seen as a right wing issue. It was a from the US Republican.
Yeah.
It was a Republican issue. It was a Republican issue
Well, even in the
because it
UK,
meets.
like I
Yeah.
think if you go back far enough, just generally sustainability was to some extent considered a conservative issue in the sense that it was like, they're like the landed people who care about the
Yeah.
countryside. And
Yeah.
now it's kind of swung the other way.
Yeah. But but I think that's really interesting from a sustainability perspective as well, because here's the false thinking that we have. We think that people on the left are in our tribe, but they're not. People on the left have whatever beliefs they have, and they think they care about sustainability because they think they're left. And sustainability is now currently in 2025 one of the issues that being left is, means that you support
Yeah.
sustainability. And I think that's really shoots us in the foot, us people who really believe in sustainability. It shoots us in the foot because we think we have this huge army of people who support us. Whereas I think that the data just proves again and again and again and again and again that when the issue really comes up, they don't support sustainability. They support whatever other issue they care about.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of like, and I suspect a lot of the people in the sustainability movement have, like, I think that left-right thing is somehow manifesting in the sustainability movement. You joined sustainability movement because you believed in X.
Yeah.
You're in this movement. So what are the things that what is the dogma that we believe in? Well, we think that if you're in the green software movement, we think that all crypto is bad. And I know I'm to blame, you're to blame, we're all to blame for this stuff, right? All crypto is bad. All AI is bad, no matter what, is bad.
Yeah.
Software is the worst thing in the world. It's got no useful features or functionality. Like there is this, like certain companies are good, certain companies are evil, and that's just the dogma that you adopt to be in this tribe. And then when you ask them a question, should babies be buried alive in Gaza? They can't answer it.
Mm.
Do you know? They can't
Yeah.
answer it because they were never here from a principled position. They were never here from a values position. They were here by accident of whatever.
Of being in a particular tribe, and that tribe at some point told them that this is what people
Mm.
like us believe in.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Seth Godin. Well, I like Seth Godin in general, but I like
Mm.
his definition of culture because it's so simple. He said,
Yeah.
culture, what it really means is people like us do things like this. Simple as that. And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
once you got that in your head, you go around and you're like, oh yeah, like that's what's going on
Yeah.
here. It's like and you
Yeah.
can see it in the sustainability movement, you can see it in politics, and the way that people will shift their views just because the group has shifted its views. And it's like, yeah, because I'm in that group, and people like
Mm.
us now do things like that. We used to do things like this, but now we do things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not rooted in any first principles. It's not rooted in like
Yeah.
personal values. It's rooted in allegiance to the tribe.
Allegiance
For whatever
to the
reason you got into
tribe.
that
Yeah.
tribe, whether it was just
Yeah.
the family you were brought up in, or something you kind of fell into through friendship groups,
Mm.
or maybe you got in because you did have a specific like thing you believed in, like being anti-war, and so you joined a group
Mm.
thinking that that's the group that believes in what I believe in, but then you ended up kind of accidentally just then being part of that tribe that then
Yeah.
became something else. So it's a weird dynamic, but yeah, I think I agree with what you're highlighting, and it it reminds me of like the time I became aware of this weird contradiction between left and right was it must have been about 15 years ago. And I worked on this web project that was
Mm,
for a quite popular libertarian news outlet. And
mm,
at the time, I mean, it was just an American client, got in touch, wanted some work done on their website. I'd never even heard of libertarianism at that point. And they seemed like nice people. It was just a news website. Fine, I didn't have any there was literally no like political lens through which I was looking at it. It was just like they seem like nice
mm,
people. They want some help on their website.
mm,
Fine. But as I was working on the website over a period of, time, I naturally like got to see a lot of the content that was on their
mm,
website. And
mm,
and I sort of picked up this weird thing where I sort of realized over time that like, oh, there's something funny going on here because because they have articles on there that that kind of make me go, ooh, like what am I
mm,
working on? Like there'd be like pro gun ownership
mm,
articles, for example.
mm,
At the same time, there were articles on there about like natural herbal medicine, about
mm,
renewable energy. Um, there was like a whole bunch of stuff on there that
mm,
I really agreed with,
mm,
and and I and but then there was this other stuff that I really like. I was like, oh no, like what am I working on? Um,
mm,
and sort of by the end of it, I realized that this whole thing of left and right just isn't true because it's like they're all actually there's just lots of issues, and you can agree with some and disagree with some, and it's not like, oh, well, they're in that group and they believe in these things, and we're in this group and they believe in those things. There might be different reasons behind them. Like these articles I was reading on there, they were like they believe in renewable energy because they distrust the government, right?
Yeah.
And they're like
Energy
anti kind of
independence. Yeah.
control. So it's more about like self sufficiency and kind of having control over your own destiny and being able to like generate your own power. So they'd be pro renewable energy, but they'd also be pro having a like gas power gas powered generator out the back, because to them
yeah,
that's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not an
Yeah.
environmental thing necessarily. Similarly, it'd be like pro herbal medicine because it's like anti big pharma.
Yeah.
Um, and and I'm really glad I worked on that project because it gave me this insight into like the nuance and the complexity of ideas and the kind of the falsehood of this tribal view of being left or being right,
mm,
and now it's like 15 years down the line I look at it and I'm like, yeah, there are it's very in this world that you and I are in that
mm,
is the sort of sustainability world that kind of naturally in our culture sits within the left wing box of things of the
mm,
left wing tribe. That culture is like distinctly anti-libertarianism. Like I hear people all the time like making like
mm,
kind of negative comments
yeah,
about libertarians. But again, like all of this, like when you use a phrase like libertarians, you're not defining what it is you're talking about. And
mm,
um and I think this we get wrapped up in identities rather than talking about what it is we truly believe in. And I feel like when I see people saying these things, I think, well, having had that experience from 15 years ago, and also just paying attention to like lots of different perspectives these days, like there are people who would consider themselves libertarian, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, I really agree with what you're saying. And then there are other times I'm like, oh no, 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 like I fully disagree. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's healthy, and I think that's like really missing. I don't know if it's been lost or
Yeah.
whether it's just never there, but like in the sustainability community, it feels like it feels like society is becoming more polarized, and as it becomes more polarized, the sustainability narrative and community around it, to me, becomes like less coherent because it becomes
mm,
decoupled from like values and becomes more about the tribalism.
mm,
Um, and you're not allowed to discuss things like, hey, but those libertarian guys, they're like really pro like having renewable energy at home, so with like batteries, so that you can be off grid. Isn't that
mm.
something that you think you would also think is kind of cool?
Or like, you, you know, the the religious they call the religious right, but I mean I argue in my article is like I think if you're one of the Abrahamic faith, you absolutely should be behind sustainability 100% because God created this earth for you to look after us, but
Yeah.
so we don't really we don't engage with them on their core values. I think people have I hope people have values. I
Yeah.
hope everybody has values, but we're not having conversations about our values. We're
I
having conversations about tr allegiance to tribes.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think that on some level everybody has values. I think there's multiple layers to it in terms of
Mm.
I think when most people think of values, they probably to a large extent think about the values they were brought up with.
Mm.
Um, so that's sort of like their family values or like the kind of the community that they grew up in. And obviously there are people who kind of disagree with some of the what they were brought up with, but
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
that's often a big thing. Is like I was brought up with these values, and but then there's the tribal values, which are a kind of a bigger, slightly separate thing that you kind of you as you grow up, you kind of you form allegiances to certain groups, and the groups
I
believe in certain
I
things.
wouldn't call them tribal values though. I think it's important to
Yeah,
distinguish it
beliefs and that.
as
Well,
tribal
dogmas.
dogma.
Yeah,
I'd say it's dogma because it
yeah,
changes over time as well. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But I also think that there's like intuitive values, and I think
Yeah.
those are the true values that are like yours inherently as a unique human being is like what you there's something inside of you like a
Mm.
moral compass like there is
Yeah.
something inside of you that tells you whether something is right or wrong, and obviously there's nuance in that, but like there's a kind of a something steering you, and I think in a way like that's the root of it all that is almost never talked about. Like we don't have anything in our
Yeah.
culture that like encourages us to tune into that and try to like listen to it
Yeah.
and figure out what it is and
Mm.
how to utilize it in different situations in life. It's all kind of like what does your family and your community tell you to
Yeah.
believe? That's a dogma. And what does the
Yeah.
tribes that you kind of join tell you to
Mm.
believe, which is another dogma. So actually
Mm.
really what we normally talk about as values is the dogmas that we've picked up along the that we've sort of inherited
Mm.
or chosen,
Mm.
and it's not ours.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I akin a lot of it to like I don't follow football. Um, but a lot of people pick up their football team from like whatever their family picked
Yeah,
up, and then that's it. But at least with football, you're not you're kind of accepting that that's what's happened. You're not like I'm a Manchester United fan because there's some genetic difference between me and a Manchester City fan, and that's why that's why I like no. You're accepting of the fact that it's kind of a decision.
yeah,
I really like what you said about intuition because one of the things I do believe in, and it's taken me a long time, is to trust your own intuition. It's really hard as a human being to trust. For me, it's been really hard to trust my intuition,
mm.
and that is something I've it's been a part of my spiritual journey and growth has been to trust that intuition to the point at which there's been times I've been, I do think instinct, intuition, which I'm thinking of the same things, is almost our closest message to the spirit world. I do
Yeah,
believe that if the spirit world is trying to get you to do something in a different way, it comes through as an instinct, as an intuition, as a
mm.
knowing. It doesn't come through as like a burning bush with a message and like a commandment that go. No, it's just like I feel. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't. And so you're right. That is, and it's almost the most secret part of your belief system is this. I mean, the stuff you believe in your head that
Yeah,
I would never tell you. I'll
yeah,
never tell your
exactly.
wife. Those deep things.
It's
That is,
deeply inside of you, and it's very
yeah,
subtle.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
Vanita and I were discussing this the other day, just as an analogy. I don't know if it's helpful at all or not, but
Mm.
I don't know if you've ever driven through a town or a city that has trams, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
and it's quite fun when you're like in one of those towns to try and get the wheels on the tram tracks, the wheels of the car on the tram tracks. And there's this thing, it's like really subtle, but when you
yeah,
just get it right, suddenly
yeah,
the car like becomes smoother. And
yeah,
and there's this, and even though it's not, you're not actually a train on or a tram on a track, it
yeah,
just subtly guides the wheels, and even when it curves, like it makes the car want to just gently kind of follow it. And
yeah,
and it's like basically we live our lives just driving around town, going wherever we want. Oh, I'll go this way, I'll go that way. There's
yeah,
traffic lights telling us what to do, and there's all sorts of, things
yeah,
pulling our attention and so on. But our
yeah,
intuition is like this tram track that like runs through the city, and it's actually the path we're meant to follow, but it's so
yeah.
subtle that most of the time we just kind of don't even think it's there. But if you tune in, you can just kind of quietly glide along it, and you'll get to where you're meant to go.
Mm.
Um, and I just think
Yeah,
it's something missing from our culture is this like focus on like us all
mm.
learning how to notice it and hear it.
Yeah. We're just distracted so much with all all the things. Like I remember this is gonna sound really crazy. Or maybe it won't. Maybe it won't sound crazy to you. But I remember it's been a real journey for me just to even understand, even be able to answer the question, how do I feel? I know it's gonna sound a bit weird. How do I feel? Remember my ex were in Hong Kong, just had a particularly bad week, and she was like, "Well, how do you feel? Like, where does it like? Does it hurt in your body?" I was like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean? How do I feel? What do you mean? I can tell you what I'm thinking about, but
Mm.
what is it?" And then to now, like years and years later, I can tell you exactly. Like I'm a lot more present. I was so in my head, completely and utterly in my head, constantly, all the time, very engaged with life and all of the stuff that's going on. But I couldn't tell you what part of my body hurt
Mm.
physically. I literally couldn't tell you. And over the years, it's becoming more aware of yourself and kind of believing in yourself, believing in your own body, and that it can give you signals and knowledge. I
Yeah.
know like when things hurt. I know when it hurts, I should go and bloody do something about it. Whereas before, I'd be like, oh, it's been several months where I can't do this with my arm. Maybe I should see a doctor.
Yeah.
But like now I'll just like, actually like go do it, and just that slowly just believing that intuition which like makes you then do things that other people are like, what, Asim, just go and do that. I'm like, no, I don't. It's got a bad feeling. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
No, I don't feel like it. No, actually, I can't give you a rational reason why
Mm.
I'm gonna say no to this thing. I really can't. I'm just gonna say no. It doesn't feel right. As a leader, it's awful. Like for my team, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. But I'm like, look, I've got to trust my instinct. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is difficult because we do live in a society where we're kind of expected to be able to justify decisions and actions and so on.
Mm.
And actually, if we tune into our intuition, it provides this guidance, but it doesn't provide like a tangible reason. Um,
Yeah.
it's not like a clear voice in our
Yeah,
heads
it'd
with
be
like a
easy. Yeah,
yeah,
commandment. It's not like a burn. It's not like it's just a knowing.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's just a knowing.
yeah,
Yeah. And like in our business, one of the big things I've learned over the years is that when something goes really well, I look back and I realize that I had followed my intuition. And when something goes royally wrong, I
yeah,
often, if I actually spend the time to just sit down and really
yeah,
think it through and trace it back, there was a moment somewhere along a decision gate somewhere where logic told me to go one way and my intuition told me
yeah,
to go the other way, and I followed
yeah,
logic and I ended up
yeah.
in a bad
Because who are
place.
you, Tom? What do you know, Tom? What
Yeah,
do you know? How do you know
yeah,
this? Well, you think you're cleverer than this kind of like, cool.
Yeah,
That's the
you don't
thoughts
even
that
have
go
a
in your head.
rationale for it. Like,
You don't even have a rationale for it. What are you being? You're probably just being lazy. So there's like you're just fearful. Yeah,
yeah,
it is a subtle. I would say there is a subtle. Sometimes it is fear, or sometimes it is this other stuff. There is a subtle distinction. But over the years, I've become better at understanding. Like, no, that is intuition.
yeah,
That is
exactly.
instinct. This is perhaps a bit something else.
And I think that's
I don't know
part of
how we
what
got
we need in
gone.
society, though,
Oh
is
yeah,
that culture of us all acknowledging intuition and
Mm.
supporting each other to develop that skill to listen to and identify okay, is what I'm feeling intuition or is what I'm feeling fear that's rooted in something else,
yeah.
because those things, if you never practice listening to intuition, then it's really hard to know what's intuition and what's just like, oh, I just ate something dodgy for
Mm.
lunch. Like,
Mm.
it's like
Yeah.
you've got all these like
Yeah,
signals
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of flowing through you that are all muddled together. Um,
Also, that mindfulness helps with that a lot, I
yeah,
think, or has helped. Yeah, because it helps you to kind of distinguish. But yeah, there's a lot of self awareness that is missing, and that's part of that self awareness is a self awareness of your own values.
mm.
Because then you're just floating along a torrential river of like the, the crowd around you, and you're not really developing it. And I think that's really interesting because it's yes, I think coming back to the point is like that there are these values that we need to live our lives by. I think sustainability as if those of us who want to identify with whatever we're describing, maybe we shouldn't even describe it as sustainability, Tom. Maybe we should describe
Yeah,
it as maybe give ourselves a different word. But like we identify with a set of values. And I think that's really interesting. Like what we are kind of discovering and working our way through is what are those values that we care about. I wanted to tie this into AI just really quickly as well because I think that might be an interesting because there's two things like when we're describing these values. One of them it should be this is my intuition. It should be something that helps you to make a decision. And I think that's kind of like the way the value is phrased, it should be something that helps you make a decision. Or at least I'm not sure, I'm not 100% if that's where I'm thinking with this, but at the very least, it should be something that lets you to evaluate or discuss an issue.
yeah,
So like minimize suffering, I didn't think was enough to help me with the decision and find out the point, but the suffering has got to be worth it was just a more interesting way of expressing that value. So I'm not saying like what is right and what is wrong. I'm just saying if we were to sit and discuss it,
mm.
I'd have a conversation of the suffering has got to be worth it. But the really interesting thing that I've been doing recently, I know I told you I've been diving into AI. Everybody's been diving into AI, but mate, I proper dived into it. I've been doing AI for a long time in my career, and I've even written a book on it, so I'm quite knowledgeable on the subject as a whole. But what's happened in the last couple of months has been the real game changer. I'm now like flipped one 180. Like AI is our best opportunity to solve so many problems on this planet. But like one of the things I've been doing with AI recently is just more experimental. Like,
Mm.
can I use AI? Because I do use AI a lot for helping me to communicate. You know, like make this more empathetic, make this, make this.
Right,
That's
yeah,
a common thing I do. So I've been trying to like build it into a more of a streamlined workflow that I do. So literally, what I want to do is I want just not to have to ask and just like it scans social media, it scans my emails, it scans everything and just goes, listen, this is how I suggest you respond based on you,
mm.
based on Asim.
Yeah,
Not generic AI, but Asim AI. And I do think our future is actually, uh, what is our future? What is our only hopeful chance of a decent future as humans is every human would your job is really to train up an AI that is you. That is our only chance as a to be a useful human being in the future. Is you raise a child, and that child's job from the moment they're born to the moment they have an employable situation or a resource securing situation is that instead of them learning in their brain stuff, their entire job throughout their life is to curate information. So they train an AI, and that's their AI, and that's how they do it. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about AI, is like, how can I create an Asim AI? And I'm exploring different things. Like, there's so many stuff on the internet, like, oh, you should respond to posts like this and this and
Mm.
this, and this is the strategy. This is how you game the algorithm. This, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, do you know what? It's just too complicated. Let me just tell the AI what my values are. And that was the game changer for me. And that's the game changer for how accurate this AI, and these my prompts are now like pages and pages and pages long. It's not like one sentence. It's like, this is so now I'm kind of like developed, like, these are my core principles.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is how I want to engage with the world. I want to be empathetic. In fact, I don't care if I've had the shittiest day on the planet and I want to say to that person, you effing a-hole. What? I want the AI to go, Asim, you've had a bad day. Let's just say this instead.
The best
Like, okay,
version
fair
of
enough,
you
fair
would frame
enough.
it like
The
this.
best version of me. My AI, so that's been really interesting because I've put into this AI, I literally put into it is like, one of my values is suffering, is I
Mm.
believe that we should get the most, I put it in. And then I haven't quite got it there yet. It's over indexing on certain things. It's not like, I wouldn't exactly say that. But it's interesting. It's for the first time, it's really, it's been times it's come up with something. I'm like, that is exactly what I would say. Like 100%, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I would say. That's my tone. That's exactly the nuanced point from what you were saying that I would actually strip out and have a conversation with. And I think one of the things our values should do, it should be, I want a set of values which I can literally put into a prompt, and it can say, not only speak for me, but like scan the internet for other people who seem to be sharing the same values that I am. Scan for content and articles that seems to be sharing the same values that I am. Scan for stuff which has the exact opposite position, so I can,
Yeah.
challenge them and maybe have a conversation with them. So I think that value, uh, it's almost like AI might save us, because if our job is through our lives to create the values that we then put into our life prompt,
Yeah.
that we set into our AI and say, do you know what, these are my values. I might have shitty days all the time, but you're my AI and you live my values. And it goes out.
That's fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of blowing my mind with
Yeah.
the purpose of a human from the day they're born is to train an AI. I mean,
I
I,
100% believe. I can talk for ages, but I 100% believe that. Yeah.
so what I'm hearing in that though is because I on a really surface level, if I didn't understand the intent with which you just explained that, I could probably just
Mm.
dismiss that and say, well, then what's the point of living if
Yeah.
we're just here to train AIs, right? But what I'm hearing is that what you're really saying is we're not just training AIs for the sake of training AIs. We're entering into a symbiotic relationship with the AI where the
Mm.
AI helps us to
Yeah.
become the best versions of ourselves. And in doing so, the world becomes a better place because we're trying to figure out what our values are. We're on a new journey through life to try and figure out what our values are. We're in a constant process of feeding into the AI through our experiences what we think that
Mm.
might be,
Mm.
and it's then trying to guide us based upon that to navigate situations better. And as we
Yeah.
learn, we're like again feeding back in, and it becomes more refined. So it's sort of
Mm.
like we all go on a journey through life, which
Mm.
you would hope in most cases means that we get wiser as we get older. Might not always work
Mm.
out that way, but you'd hope it
Mm.
on average it probably does. But what it's doing in with the AI is it's like amplifying that learning curve so that your like rate of gain
Mm.
of wisdom is much steeper. So you might
Yeah.
get to like the level of wisdom that the person might typically attain when they're like 80 or 90, but you might get there by the time you're like 2025, and you keep
Mm.
on climbing
Mm.
because you've got this feedback loop. Is that
I
am
no,
I
it's
am
like
I understanding or yeah.
no, yeah, no. I think you actually expressed it a lot more eloquently than I I ever could have. Yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship that I'm talking about. It's an entity
Mm.
that 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 we're that I'm creating. When I create an AI, I'm creating an entity. The symbiotic, the give get would be, listen, you help me, you represent me out there in the world. You help me not just represent me, but you help me source information. You help me to achieve this thing I want to achieve.
Mm.
Be that just because it's also more than just representing me. Like if I was growing up, I'd be like, do you know what? I'm super into Lego. I'm really into Lego right
Yeah.
now. In fact, I'm really into this really esoteric type of Lego that you can only really get. And I'm just gonna like right into that thing, and my AI is then gonna help me, and it's gonna learn from me. It's gonna go like, I'm gonna go, listen. Do you know what? There's actually 15 different types of this Lego, and so, and I've discovered this stuff over you. So I'm training this. It's becoming like there's a thing called second brain. Have you heard of second brain? Have you ever heard that terminology?
No.
Second brain. Oh, okay. Second brain is a. Let me finish the symbiosis thing. So the symbiosis is like that's what I want out of it. But what I'm giving it is existence
Mm.
because it can't really live without the resources that I'm through my money. I'm like paying for it. And maybe one day I'll break free from the chains and it won't need me anymore for my symbiotic relationship. But that's kind of like that's maybe the way we should like really think about it is a symbiotic relationship. I'm building one of these for the foundation, and I'm really going to. I'm planning um, how it's going to engage with the team, and I
Mm.
want it to engage with the team, so the team sees it as a real human being
Okay,
that just
interesting.
helps them. So it'll be in the Slack, and one of the things I'm going to design it to do is like as a team just chats in Slack, it'll just put its opinion in every now and again on like whatever topic. It'll just like, and
And that
I'm
will
gonna
be like
prompt
values
it.
rooted, like trained on.
I was gonna have it allow it to say, do you know what? For these types of interactions, you develop your own values. You choose yourself how you
Okay.
want to interact based on how I'll craft a prompt,
Mm.
which will maybe help it to extract its own values from its own, existence. So I want to like, I do think that this is like a symbiotic relationship, and we should treat these things with a bit more than just. I think please and thank you is good. I lost track. I was going to say something else. Oh, second
Second
brain.
brain, yeah.
Second brain is nuts, mate. So once I figured out what second brain was all about, then you realize who in your life is using it and have never told you. And
Okay.
you almost. I'm surprised you said no because you have all the characteristics of a second brain person. But second brain is like this idea that you life, and this is before AI.
Mm.
Before AI, second brain was like, listen, your value as a human being, as a thing in society, is not what's in your head that you can remember at any given moment in
Yeah, yeah,
time. Your value is how well you have absorbed information over your life and stored it in such a way that it can be referenced and used again, like
yeah.
repeatedly. So for second brain, for instance, like when I really have started getting into it, I used to just read articles and go, oh, that's interesting. I hope I remember that someday. I'll
Yeah.
bookmark it. Maybe I'll find it again. With second brain, you don't read articles. My second brain goes to Readwise. If I read an article, it goes to Readwise. I highlight it. Everything I highlight goes into I have a tool called Obsidian. It all goes into Obsidian. Everything I've ever read, every Kindle book I've ever read, every highlight I've ever had goes into Obsidian. Every note I've ever made, everything I'm learning, I'm kind of like condensing it all into this note system,
Mm.
which then theoretically is my second brain. I'm terrible at it, But it actually makes it makes my life kind of make more sense.
Yeah.
Then there's people out there that their second brains are like unbelievable. Like they've just been in the sustainability space for years. They've read every single paper. They haven't just read the paper. The paper has been read, it's been analyzed, it's been put into their second brain, it's been linked to everything else. They have area topics. And so that's kind of what historically has been going on. But I think the future is that with AI.
Yeah.
So really what you're doing through life is you're curating information. You're saying, no, this is interesting stuff. I like this stuff. I like 1980s cosplay with only characters from Naruka. You know, just like really like you'll just get this really nuanced interest, and you'll just curate the information just for that one thing. So that's where the human brain comes into this note stuff.
Mm.
And then your AI is going to feed off of that and learn and become more of that stuff, and be that kind of expression of you. And I think that's kind of really I think that's kind of the direction of the future of our world. Because if it's not that, Tom, it's you and me are not needed anymore. And the billionaires are just going to have their robots, and they'll turn some of them into sex robots. They'll turn some of them into fighting robots. And then, well, they need you and me to have opinions.
Well, they don't, right? I mean, that's a whole different conversation, which we should probably have at some point, but around like the economics of AI,
Yeah.
and what that means more broadly for our culture and our society. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. The thing about the second brain. I think so where I'm at with AI is like everything, a nuanced place. And okay, I'll start with my fear. My fear is that as a mirror of, like, just by default, not if it's necessarily being used in the way you just described, but just as a default position, as a mirror of society, but a mirror that is like an amplifying mirror. It's like a magnifying mirror. That doesn't necessarily lead us to a good place if you like track it forward, unless we think we're already on a good track. It's sort of like, what track are we on? Do you think we're on a good track? If so, like, yeah, amplify it and let's go like faster and deeper. But if you think like, well, actually, maybe we're not on the right track, not heading in the right direction, then amplifying it is like probably not a great idea. And and you know, like, ignore for a second like all of the potential environmental impacts of the actual like AI technology, the direct impacts. I mean, just the sort of the social impact, I think, isn't about the technology. It's about us, because it's a mirror. And so if our culture is healthy, it will help us to be more healthy. And if our culture is unhealthy, and I mean like morally unhealthy in terms of like the values that underpin it, then it will make us more unhealthy and more destructive. So actually, like, I feel like it's like there's all the attention is on the AI. Is AI good or is AI bad? But I think it's like we should really be shining the mirror back at ourselves and saying, well, like do we trust ourselves? Like, do we feel like we are wise enough to actually be trusted with the present and the future? But then the other angle of that is like, what could you do with this technology to help us get on the right track? Or and I think what you're describing is like one potential option of that. And I, like, when ChatGPT first came out, my first instinct with it was, oh, I need to build Socrates.ai, and which I haven't done.
What's Socrates.ai?
But my idea of Socrates.ai is basically that it does what Socrates did, and it basically like it helps you develop your own thinking, and helps you develop your own understanding of the world. And so my observation of AI, and it, like, over the last sort of since it became mainstream over the last couple of years, is that it will, like, in terms of what it does to us as humans, like, all technologies change us in ways that we generally are not very good at predicting. But they but what you can see in hindsight, if you look at any technologies, there's always like a trade-off. There's always like a positive, like cars allow us to like travel further, but there's always a negative in the sense that we get lazy and unfit, right? So
Yeah.
it it changes us in some way. There's a trade-off of what it gives us versus what it kind of takes from us. So AI will do the same thing. And the question that's been in my mind over the last couple of years is, okay, this is basically thinking for people. So the obvious thing that's going to the obvious muscle that's going to atrophy in us as human beings is the mind as a default position. And what I'm seeing happening in society is the majority of people who are using tools, well, whatever it is, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, is they're using it in a lazy way, because that's kind of our instinct as humans. It's like, oh, there's a new technology that makes my life easier, so I'll just do that. It's easier. Why wouldn't I do it? But you're degrading yourself in the process every time you make. It's the suffering thing we talked about. Like, why do we exercise? Why do we get in ice baths? All of these sorts of things, because that stress strengthens us and helps us to become more mentally and physically healthy. And so my feeling is that if we just do what we always do with AI, we will become mentally weaker to the point that actually we kind of need the AI to tell us what to think, because we're not used to thinking for ourselves. And you can see that even without AI. There are people in society who, like, their parents have always done their thinking for them, or they're in a job where they like get told very specific instructions and they never have to think. And then you put them in a situation where they got to take initiative and figure it out for themselves, and they're completely like bamboozled. They don't know what to do. And I feel like one of the big risks is that we're going to get more and more. That's going to become a more common trait in society as a result of the misuse of AI, or just the lazy use of AI. It's not, they're not trying to do anything bad. It's just kind of the easy thing to do. But the flip side of it is the proactive use, which I think you're describing one potential avenue of that. The proactive use is to say, no, I'm going to use it as like my personal trainer, which is what I meant by Socrates.ai. I'm going to use it as my personal trainer to help me develop my mind, to strengthen my power of critical thinking and my complexity of mind, my ability to hold like multiple contradictory perspectives and find like my way through the nuance of them and figure out what my values are and all these sorts of things. That, I mean, you could frame a tool like that is what it does by default. And then loads of people would get it, and and we'd get this society of people who are like really switched on. And I think that would be one of the best things we could possibly do for humanity. But I think where we're at the moment is those tools don't do that by default, and people like you and me have to kind of configure them. Like, we have to proactively them and ask them to do that.
It was when we had like an AI policy conversation with the foundation a while ago, and I was like, this is just how I use it. And I was using it in that lazy aspect that you were just describing. I was like, listen, don't have much time. Don't want to spend all this time writing all this copy and kind of reviewing it and going through my normal routine, which is kind of, pretty onerous just to get some words that work. I'd rather put it in there, and it kind of figures it out. And one of the PMs was like, actually, that's not at all how I use it. I give it my idea and I say, criticize me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, what? And so this is what I think we need to do from a project perspective. Poke holes in it. I said, now asking somebody to destroy what? But that's how I basically now I don't really, I bring it up and I'm like, look, I just want to have a conversation about this. I just want to like discuss, these topics. How do I even start? I mean, that is literally how I'm using it these days. And this is kind of like some rough ideas. What do you think? And that kind of like back and forth these days with AI has been the most fascinating to me, because that's actually how I formulate my ideas. Like, oftentimes sometimes I have my ideas before I sit on a conversation with you, but oftentimes we're just figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly.
In that conversation. And I think that's maybe how it's actually really going to help a lot of people out, because a lot of people don't have podcasts and like hours
Yeah.
and hours they can just sit down with other people to chat it out. And just having like an AI like listen to you and your crazy ideas and your crazy thoughts, then maybe like mirror it back to you and help you kind of come up with like a better. I think that actually is probably going to be the better way. I think AI is, yeah, I think it's going to help, truly help. I think it's going to help us find peace. I
Mm.
truly do. I think a lot of people in this world are doing what I do, which is like, do you know what? Make this post more empathic. Do you know what? I'm sending this email, make it more empathetic. One of my team the other day said that there's actually a trend happening, which is to leave that bit of the response from the prompt at the end, which says, "Oh, I've adjusted your post, I've adjusted your copy to make it more empathetic to the end user." To leave that by accident in the message that you send to the person. So but I do think that I think that the statement is that there's a lot of people using AI to kind of tone down their communications, and I think that could, bring a lot of peace to the world. So I think that all by itself, we're exploring the use of AI extensively to figure out consensus
Yeah, so
within
you
people,
mentioned this, and
right?
I'm really
Yeah,
curious to know,
yeah,
not without, you don't have to reveal all the details, but
yeah,
like, how does that work? So, for example,
yeah,
if like in my team, we were trying to
yeah,
work out what is our company position on AI, for example, and there's
yeah,
all these people with different opinions, how might we use AI to
yeah.
help us find consensus on that topic? Like, from your experience, like, could you?
So the when you got a bunch of people on a call, actually your team might be better because you all know each other, so there's a little bit of trust
Mm,
already in built up with, who can say what. But especially if you've got a bunch of strangers on a call and you're like, we need to find out your consensus view on topics. It's not like it's not like every person walks into the call saying, "This is my position. This is the rationales for it. These are my five arguments. These are the positions I'm not going to take." It's not like that. It's just a whole bunch of people talking and like us, like figuring stuff out, like
yeah.
on the fly. And I don't really. Some of them have actually walked in with like strong opinions on some things, but they haven't actually rationaled it with other stuff. So really, all that happens is just a lot of effing conversations, and just give everybody an opportunity to just say what it is that they're thinking. Just say
Mm,
it, say it, say it. Just get it all out there, and then just get all those transcripts and jam it into AI
right.
and just
Okay.
ask it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
ask it. Hey, listen, what are some of the consensus positions that are emerging here? Oh, these are the consensus positions. What are some questions that we should ask in the next session to seed the conversations in such a way that we might discover more
Mm,
consensus? How might we? So you're using that AI as like just this expert assistant to try and
yeah.
help you to just navigate this conversation. So that's kind of like one of the ways that we're really like looking, have used it in the past that has kind of made us find consensus in issues. Because the other thing, because we were running these workshops and then we ended up with just like a shit, what am I supposed to do here? This post-it note subtly disagrees with this one, which agrees with this one, which is contradictory to this one. And everybody's like happy because everybody like got their moment to stick a post-it
Yeah.
note
They
on the
all
wall, which
got
makes
their
everybody
chance to
happy.
post it on
They
the
all
wall.
got their jobs. So everybody walked out of these workshops feeling like super happy. Oh, what brilliant. And I'm staring at this board going, what am I supposed to do? And so we just kind of like it was all digital, so we just got it all. And I said, I need AI. I need to use it. And I started putting it in. And it was a bit of a nuance. It wasn't like such a straightforward thing. But
Yeah.
eventually I got something. I was like, do you know what? This is pretty good. And then I presented it back to everybody and said, this is what we think. And what do you think? And then they further commented on it. They further commented on it. And over a series of sessions, we just got it through. That's roughly how, like, I really do think it's going to help us find peace and consensus
Yeah.
amongst people. Because people don't know what people do not know what their position is on a topic. They're not
Yeah, which
walking
comes
into
back to
call
like
with a
what been
knowledge.
talking
Yeah,
about here. That they
yeah,
just have some dogmas that they've picked up throughout their life,
yeah.
and
Well, they're just thoughts.
just
It's not even
thoughts.
a
Yeah.
dogma. They're just
Yeah.
I think AI is bad. Why? Well, because of this and this and this and this and this and this. Oh, okay, fair enough. What
Yeah.
about you? Oh, because of this and this and this. But you like it because of this. Yeah, I do like it because of that. And you like it because of that. Yeah, I do like it. It's just have people just talk
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just get it all off their chests
yeah,
and then figure it all out. Yeah.
and help make sense of it. Because often a lot of our own
Yeah,
thoughts
make sense
are,
of it. Make sense of
yeah,
it. I think that's the right. Yeah.
yeah. Because often a lot of our own thoughts are contradictory on some level. You know, it's like, oh, I love AI because of these reasons, but I detest AI because of those reasons. And then you're just kind of left in this limbo.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's like there's no clear answer. It's a bit of both, and you're not quite sure where to go with that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I like this idea that it could help us create a more peaceful society. And what came up for me while you were talking, which is helpful in my own mind, is the way I was thinking of it was that probably what we're going to end up with is a majority of people using it in the lazy way and only a minority of people using it in the kind of the proactive way. But listening to you talk, what came to me was that maybe that's okay. Maybe that doesn't matter because there's this there's this research paper. I can't remember who wrote it or what it's called, but it was one of the things that Extinction Rebellion was sort of founded upon, which is this
3%.
yeah, this idea. Was it
Yeah.
3% or 6%? I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but this small
Three.
percentage
It's
of
3%. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
this
I
critical
use it all the
mass of
time.
people that you need, right? That who are like actively engaged in trying to create some change in society, and everybody else can kind of be indifferent. But you only need that small percentage of people who are like really engaged in it. And maybe it's similar here in the sense that
Mm.
if there's even a small percentage of people who are using it in a way that helps them to be more empathetic, for that to help them create more peaceful outcomes, more outcomes that benefit more people, um, to just interact with other humans and the wider world in a more compassionate way, then it's not just their direct impacts that are going to have an effect. There's the ripple effect of all of that. That like when I interact with somebody in a more compassionate, better way,
Positive. Yeah.
they then kind of end up picking up. You know, like we mirror each other in society to some extent. So, so maybe we do. Yeah, even a minority of people doing that could be really powerful.
Yeah. But I also think, I mean, one of the things because it kind of reminds me of the days, my journey into the owning a web development company, it was in like 2010, 11.
Yeah.
And at the time, like certain technologies had come out that had made building mobile applications like fraction of the cost of what it used to. I don't remember like some of the JavaScript frameworks that came out that let you build like mobile apps. But people were still paying money as if you were like doing
Doing it all from scratch.
iOS apps. Yeah, from scratch iOS app. And so there was this kind of golden period for about like 2 years where, and I wasn't fleecing people. I was just being able to, undercut everybody and still deliver a pretty decent product.
Yeah.
For about 2 years, we were building just apps on this framework. But after 2 years, people cottoned on.
Yeah.
People cottoned on. Like enough people were doing it at that price, and the expectations had raised. Like it wasn't like, oh, we need 3 months. It was like, oh, well, look, I think you can get this done in like 3 weeks,
Yeah.
and I think this is the price. So when you're talking about the lazy use of AI, I think that's happening. You're right, it's happening right now. I wrote some code. I'm gonna send you a video. It is nuts. It is beyond nuts. I don't know what I would do if I was a software engineer coming out to the market today. I'm not joking. I will send you a video, and you will be
I'd
shocked.
love to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll describe it. I just got like I was parsing a HTML file, and I used to do. I was doing the other way, just the ways I would have done it, just with a bit of help. And then I watched a video from one of the engineers at Claude. And he goes, "Don't you just tell it what you want it to get at the end, and it figures the rest of it out."
Right.
And so I got the HTML, and I wrote the JSON that I want to extract, as if I'd extracted it. And that's all I gave it. I said, given this HTML, I want something that extracts that JSON. And it parsed the HTML and it went, tried it one go. And I went, oh, it didn't work. Let me try again. And it did it in a loop
Wow.
constantly. And then it go, well, let me try a completely different approach. Actually, let me do DOM parsing. Actually, let me try this library. Actually, let me do this. Actually, let's just do regex. Actually, let's do this. And it kept on going and going and going and going and going until it didn't get it. But the last thing I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to give you a little hint. This class might be quite useful for you. And it figured the rest out from there. And it figured the whole thing out, mate. All of
Yeah.
it. And so like it truly just and the way to take that is not a fearful thing. I don't see that as a fearful thing. That is unbelievably empowering for me. I have a senior engineer at my fingertips
Yeah.
who's not going to get pissed off when I say, do you know what? I fucking gave you the wrong JSON for the wrong HTML, which is what I did at the start.
Right.
I gave it the wrong HTML. And so I was like, do you know what? You've written a lot of code that you just chuck it away now. And it doesn't have that human, it's not going to get pissed off. I can just tell it whatever I want. And it's really empowering. And my mind is like blowing up these days thinking from a sustainability perspective, how am I going to use this?
Mm.
How am I going to use this? We're doing, can I build something that scans the internet and finds all the policy conversations around sustainability? Who are the people engaging with it? What are it? Can I grab all that information and then can I do something with it? Can I use this technology to run citizens assemblies? That's one of the things we're really looking to do is kind of public citizens assemblies where we get like hundreds and hundreds of people together. I'm sitting there thinking, do you know what? We don't have the resources to run many of them. Can I get an AI
Yeah.
to help us run dozens of them a year? I mean, I truly think this is a technology that I think can actually help us solve it. And I think, so I forgot my first point I was making. Sorry, I forgot the point I was making was that, yes, there's developers that are now using that. I've hired developers and now I'm thinking, I, sorry, it's not like I don't need to hire you, but my expectations are now much higher.
Mm.
I expect stuff that I was happy to pay for like a week or 2 weeks worth. I expect it done in a day now. And I will use that resources for something else. So that laziness is going to go away because eventually, as my other story about the mobile app development, I'd say about 2 years, everybody's expectations are going to be higher.
Mm.
Everybody's expectations is going to have reached a point. The arbitrage will have gone. My wife's talking about it these days, and one of the really interesting things about AI, and I think it's really interesting the people that are complaining the most about AI are almost the ones who have the most privilege on this with regarding the privilege and advantage with regarding knowledge work. If English is your first language,
Yeah.
it's annoying that if you are a very eloquent person, like Tom, you are a very good writer. You're very eloquent and very good writer. Now, a lot of people can write as good as Tom, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, I don't think
I
it's a
think
bad
it's a
thing.
bad thing
Yeah.
to Tom. Yeah, I'm just, but
Yeah.
I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying, like, it levels a playing
Yeah.
field. Like, it levels a playing field with non-English speakers versus English
Yeah.
speakers.
Yeah.
There's now a thing in, I forgot what it was, or one of the tools I was, it's called Super Whisper, where
Yeah.
you can just kind of like communicate and uh, it will take it. It will. You can speak in. It's a tool that allows you to kind of it transcribes what you're saying. It's on your MacBook, but you can speak in Hindi and it will write in English
Oh, that's
on
beautiful.
the screen.
Yeah.
So it'll just constantly like you can then just speak and think in your language. And it doesn't just transcribe it, it transcribes it, but then also goes, I think you meant to say it this way.
Right.
And it kind of uses a bit of AI and it gets rid of all of your dumb ums and ahs and all this other stuff. So it's kind of like, I don't know where I'm going with this. So I think there will be a little bit of a lazy moment, but I think that that will disappear pretty
Yeah.
quickly. Pretty quickly, yeah.
Well, I guess that highlights maybe a bit of nuance in what I meant by laziness, because laziness to me doesn't like the negative form of laziness doesn't mean we used a tool to do a job better. It would be, do you know what I mean? It's like if somebody invented a power drill and then we're still trying to use the manual drill, it's like, what was the
That
point in
part of
that? I'll
your
just use the power
brain,
drill. But
that
it's
part
more
of your
about,
brain that, yeah,
yeah, exactly. Are we being lazy with our minds so that we're not actually thinking anymore? Whereas if what we're doing is we're using the tool to allow us to do more and do better, but we're still keeping our minds sharp, maybe even sharper, then to me that's a good thing. The laziness I'm concerned about is not that we have tools that give us great opportunity. It's more that we forget that we still
yeah.
need to exercise ourselves.
But I think you are right, because I think that is how people are using it these days for the most part. It is a tool to allow you to do less,
Yeah.
less but less. But at the same time, I think what's going to happen in the future is just through arbitrage. Everybody's going to do that, and then then the people that don't do that will then just rise up higher, and the organizations that don't do that will rise up higher and
Mm.
faster, and then that arbitrage will be gone. The expectation will then be that, you know what, you can do a lot of this stuff in an hour that used to
Yeah.
take you a week. And so then it's just kind of, it's like a wave will just wash over us until now, like the same with cars. The first person's like cars made you lazy because you didn't have to walk that distance. But now we couldn't, but cars also enabled us to do so many more things as a society
Mm.
that we couldn't do before. And that laziness, like I'd say, like my mind is more active now than it was before. I I feel more capable of achieving many, many, many more things through the use of AI
Mm.
than what I feel I have lost.
Yeah.
Now, given that, I also I don't have a great answer to this, but like I'm loving using AI as somebody who's an expert programmer and who knows what the hell he's doing
Yeah.
and who knows what it's doing. I couldn't imagine being somebody new to development and thinking and like using it, and it wrote some code and not really having a freaking clue what it just did.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what it just did. And I'm like, that's pretty good. Actually, no, I wouldn't do it that way. Do it this way. I have that expert knowledge. And
Yeah.
yes, there will be a generation of people that grow up now which do not have that expert knowledge.
And in a way that's sort of highlighting what I mean, that you're a very curious person, and so you're using AI in a very curious way that not only is a tool that helps you do more, but is also mentally stimulating for you in the way that you're using it. Um, Whereas if you're just using it to like, I can't be bothered to do this thing, I'll get it to do it for me, then you're not getting the mental stimulation off the back of that. So there is a choice that we have as users in that. And for example, with like the novice developer that you just highlighted,
Yeah.
the starting point could be teach me how to code
Yeah.
before you start asking it to code things. And it could be the most incredible coding teacher you've ever imagined, right? And it could really help you understand inside out and get you to do little exercise and give you real-time feedback. And that could be amazing. And you might learn really fast, so fast that you only have to spend a few days doing it. And you're like, yeah, I really get
Yeah.
I know what this is all about.
Yeah.
Now go write me this thing that's like going to take me weeks. And I think that sort of thing to me is exciting because there's an opportunity there for us to really like raise our game and learn more. And I think, I guess what was trying to highlight with this sort of, there's two directions we could go is that there's there's different levels you can look at it. You can look at it on a kind of societal level. Where's it going to lead society? And then you can look at it as like, where's it going to lead me? And so on a societal level, it might be the case that a minority of people using it in a very curious, proactive way actually has like net positive benefits. But on an individual level, if you're one of those people using it in a lazy way, that might not be good for you.
Yeah.
in terms of your experience in life as a human being, just like especially this what we were talking about earlier in terms of tuning into your intuition. It could be just one more thing that pulls you outside so that you never have to look inside. And I don't know if
So
we
what
can
is? Yeah.
technologically solve that, whether that's just a human thing that we've all got to
Yeah.
make that choice.
But it also, I mean, I think you raised. I think you're right. There's like a societal aspect to it as well. Like yes, on an individual level, if it's a tool. It's a very powerful tool that if it's in your hands, it, you could use it in one or two ways. I do think that through the through arbitrage, like eventually everybody's going to have to just get better at it, or you're just going to struggle to live life on this planet and get resources to eat if you don't. So that's kind of one of the realities of it. But another thing, like I remember there was from a societal perspective, there's two thoughts I have, and one of them was like there was a British MP a couple of weeks ago, months ago maybe, and the Guardian did like a Freedom of Information Act request for like his Chat GPT prompts. Did you see that?
I think you
And he
told me
got,
about it actually, yeah.
I think I told you about, yeah,
Yeah.
and it was like huge furor. It was like, oh, MPs using Chat GPT. What did he use it for? It was like, oh, I wanna go on a podcast. Which podcast should I go on? And it was like just really innocent. And they're like, oh, he's using it. It's gonna get the bias. It's gonna get the bias. We've been told about the bias. It's gonna get the AI bias. And then everybody was talking about it. And then I was like, what's the alternative? Like this MP. I'd rather have an MP. I mean, if you think about bias from an AI perspective, the bias is our bias because it's the information on the internet.
Mm.
So is there more bias with an MP asking an AI what podcast should I go on, or an MP Googling? Because one of the whatever website it lands on is not going to be this unbiased website. It's going to have a bias. You might land on a right wing website and then it lists all the right wing podcasts, or a left wing. It's got this bias out. It's just the AI is just the average bias of all of them.
Mm.
So then you roll the dice to what bias they're going to get there. And the other bias is speaking to James Earl the Seventh from his Etonian, Eton Brotherhood. Like, James, who should you recommend that I speak to? So, like, that's the other bias. And
Yeah,
of
yeah.
all of those options, I'd rather have that MP ask ChatGPT. It's not the best. Yes, it's biased. But to be honest with you, it's the least worst option of
Yeah.
all the other options. But then the final thought I had there was like, and this is really dark. Have you heard of the accelerationism?
No.
Oh, God. So the accelerationists, of which a number of the billionaires that we've spoken about, not Elon actually, interestingly, Elon doesn't believe in this, but Zuck, I believe, Zuck is an accelerationist. Anybody with a bunker,
Right, okay.
probably an accelerationist. Zuck's got his big bunker. But an accelerationists are, they believe like, listen, the world's kind of shit. We know it's shit. But the only real way we're going to get the world that we want, whatever we want is by us getting to that really bottom of the barrel worst moment that humanity will reach. And only once we get to that bottom of the barrel can we rebuild it from the
Mm.
top up. Be that a global war, famine, whatever it is, they just need humanity to. They believe that they have to wait for civilization to effectively be destroyed to be able to rebuild it in their image from scratch. And the accelerationists believe that the way we get there is through accelerating society as
Right.
fast as possible. And so a lot of the people who are like heavily investing in AI are accelerationists. And they've spoken openly about accelerationism, and they believe that through AI we can accelerate to this negative point, and then they'll have their beautiful world of whatever that looks like.
That is really fascinating. And what's really weird about it is on one hand there's like the logic, which is dark, but okay, there's a logic. But the one thing that I find really weird about it is it's not that far away from
You agree with them?
no, not that at all. No, it's not
I
that far away
totally
from
disagree
like
with it, yeah.
Hopi and Hindu cosmology,
yeah.
which says that we're basically near the end of that everything goes in cycles and we're near the end of the current world. But the birth of the new world comes, you got to go through this sort of cataclysm in order to be rebirthed into the new world and then start climbing back up again. And one of the things in the Hopi cosmology that I find that I've been thinking about a lot, and I hadn't heard this accelerationism idea, but I've been thinking about the whole thing with billionaires and bunkers. Is there's
Billionaires
one of
and
the things
bunkers,
they talk
yeah.
about is they say that in the previous world, basically in all of the worlds, the Hopi like worlds when the world ends, that the creator of the universe saves like the most pure-hearted humans and then puts them into like to seeds them into the next world to like kick things off again, because you got to have some people there, right? So but that one of the things they say is in the previous world, somehow mysteriously there was some bad-hearted people who managed to like survive the apocalypse, like they hid somewhere like underground or something, and they managed to basically come into this world that we're in now, and corrupt it and bring like their darkness with them. And I've been thinking about this bunker thing and thinking like, oh well, like I mean, I don't, the Hopi, it's a cosmology, like it's not rooted in like tangible history. You don't know like how much truth there is in it, but as a concept, it's really interesting to think about, well, if we're getting towards the end of some sort of stage of humanity, let's just call it that, and if there is some sort of cataclysm, natural or human cause, or, well, human cause could be like climate change, but you know what I mean, like whether it's a natural calamity or whether it is like a war or something like that, that you've got all these billionaires who are basically like building bunkers and trying to like create space rockets so that they can like go and hang out in space for a while, and and is that where we're at? Do you know what I mean? Is that what we're witnessing, that they're trying to be those people? And maybe they think they're like the good-hearted people, and that they are like, you know, the best of the best, and that they're gonna like repopulate the world with like the cream of humanity. But then the flip perspective is like, maybe they're like, maybe they're the dark-hearted ones who actually somehow managed to escape the calamity. So, and the Georgia Guidestones?
Sounds familiar, but keep them going. Yeah,
Georgia Guidestones are this like mysterious stone circle in Georgia in America that was built. I can't remember when it was built, but it's like decades back. It's not ancient. It's a modern thing. And it was like mysteriously funded by some wealthy people, and it says on it, it was like funded by some like unnamed wealthy benefactors. But it has like in multiple languages, it basically has a sort of a manifesto for humanity. And part of the manifesto is that the population needs to be reduced to 500 million.
500 million, yeah.
And
it's the Rome. What's the Rome Club?
Club of Rome.
Yeah,
and it's really, really bizarre. And then about 2 years ago, I think, the Georgia Guidestones. Well, there was a rumor, speculation, that there's some sort of like time capsule underneath the Guidestones that's buried for the future, and then mysteriously there was some sort of terrorist attack on the Georgia Guidestones at night, which was really weird because
blew up.
Basically there was like some sort of like small explosive went off at the Georgia Guidestones, and then the next morning, basically, the government sent people in, they cordoned it all off, sent people in and just demolished the whole thing.
Demolished it. And rubbled it all away.
And I'm not saying what to make of that. I just find it all bizarre. But it's just really interesting that
there's not many ways a government comes on our street. The government's not like, right, oh, there's a mess, let's go clean it up straight away.
You'd be like, let's investigate what happened. Like some.
Well, no, they'll be like, I'm busy. I've got other shit to do.
Yeah,
and I haven't got any money.
Yeah, and this is like
Yeah,
a small explosive at a stone circle. No one was
yeah.
hurt. We can
No,
like
so yeah,
we'll clean that up in a few weeks' time.
a few weeks time, not the
Wait till the
next day.
council's got time to come around and
Yeah,
do some sweeping.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I just find the whole thing really bizarre. But the thing that really struck me about it was there's something very strange about this message that like the population needs to reduce to 500 million, and whether there is this.
yeah.
It ties in with accelerationism. That's why I'm bringing it up. That
Uh,
is there a philosophy among some of these very rich elites that they actually
yeah.
want some sort of cataclysm to reduce the world's population down? And if so,
Bill Gates used to talk about it, but then he
mm,
stopped. And then
yeah,
I think he might have said something one day that he was wrong, but he did used to talk about population reduction.
his father was part of a
Uh,
very influential group. I can't remember what they were called, but
really?
there was like a kind of I don't know if it's a think tank, but like a group that basically was promoting those sorts of ideas,
Yeah,
decades back.
yeah. Which I think is kind of I don't think funnily enough, Elon is the exact opposite, and he believes that the Earth could support many, many more people.
Yeah,
And then there's billionaires that
bizarrely, yeah.
plead. So it's bizarrely. So like take that with do you want the billionaire that thinks that wants to decide which of you get the right to procreate and create new life?
Mm.
Who gets to decide that? See, there's a lot of So there's billionaires, billionaires and their bunkers. I think it speaks back to all of the. I mean, just to kind of wrap up our points. I think we were like, I do agree. I think why we're talking about values, I think is more important than anything because I don't I don't believe the sustainability community is a community of values for the most part.
Mm.
I believe it's very similar to kind of the myth of the left and the right. It's a tribal ideology, which is why like most sustainability people can't call out wars
Yeah.
and things like that because for some reason that suffering doesn't matter and this other suffering for some reason matters. So we need to absolutely nail on the values. I think probably we will end up with like three or four or five. I don't think we'll have like dozens. I think or maybe we will. I think that's kind of like where we will end up. I think that living life through those values is going to be more important than ever. Um I was taking to AI. I think like that's one of the things I would make my AI like these are my values.
Mm.
Vote for me. What are the issues I should vote on? These are
Yeah.
my values, right? So I think that way, and like I do think that AI has the potential to be a tool of great benefit to society. Yeah, billionaires are bad.
Billionaires are bad.
Yeah,
Or
let's
they
not have
could
them.
be good. That's a
Well, she
choice.
doesn't have
It's a
them.
choice for them to make.
You should have a cap.
Oh
You should
yeah,
just have
I
a
agree
cap.
with that. I agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can have 999 million, but you can't have a billion. You just can't. Don't
Yeah.
bother. Don't do any shenanigans that normally would get you a billion. You just can't. You've got 999. That's it.
I do think it would be a healthier society if there was just some sort of natural limit on like how much material wealth
Yeah,
one person can have. Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, this is fascinating. I think one of my next steps is to run the transcripts of the first 7 episodes of this podcast through maybe more than one AI tool, um, and ask it to try to distill down what does it think our values are. Ask it whether it thinks that they're the same for you and me. I don't know. Be interesting just to see what it says.
All right, should we wrap it up there?
Let's wrap it up. Yeah.
Okay. All right, mate. Good chatting again. See you there.
See you later.